There's just certain things like the making the macaroni and cheese scene and him eating it. It was just such an odd. It was just odd things that was in the movie. You know what I mean? Like this feels very weird,
Yeah, he
and it
ate it.
doesn't feel like a black experience.
Yeah, he ate that mac and cheese with I don't know like I felt like in the script like he wrote eats mac and cheese and put like exclamation marks at the end of eats mac because he ate it
Yeah, he
with
ate it with some
intensity.
zest.
There was a lot.
Yeah,
There's
he had a lot of zest when he was eating that.
Flows by the caseload till cash flow on Bezos. My main hoe in fuego. Withdraw when the bank close. All gas in my tank, hold it gas.
Welcome to Tone Deaf Conversation Podcast. We are on episode 17. I believe so, yes. One of the interesting things about this, I guess I'll consider it my journey in the arts, is I didn't really ever stop to think of the, what's the word? The interaction that the genre would bring. I think I was just so focused on what I could create, what I could make, but I don't think I really ever sat back and thought of where this might take me and who this might bring me to, which I think has been probably just as fulfilling as the actual work itself has been the people that I've gotten to meet. And I have a guest today, and he falls in that list of people who I probably wouldn't have known if I would have never picked up a camera. Um, yeah, so through people who I've met in this industry, I got to meet Mr. LA of the None of This Makes Sense podcast. I met him on Clubhouse, an app that I joined reluctantly, but then happened to find a couple rooms that I enjoyed, and we found, I guess, mutual interest in film. So I asked him to be on, and he was willing. So, Mr. LA, how are you doing today?
Yo, man, really, honestly, thank you for having me. I don't feel worthy, but man, I'm excited to talk about movies and film. It's a passion of mine. Uh, I think I want to say it was somewhere around the Do the Right Thing era of time when I started looking at movies differently.
Okay, wait. Pause. I know where you're going. I have a question for that.
Yes.
That I think you're going there. Okay, so I'm at the infancy of this podcast, and I've been thinking of like what question I would like to ask like anybody who's on like as a closing type question.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of my favorite movies, and wait, I don't think a black person did a black person do Brown Sugar? I can't remember.
Did a black person do Brown Sugar?
Yeah, like I feel like it's a black movie, but I can't remember if I don't remember who the director is.
Let's see, Brown Sugar.
But anyway, I really love that movie, and um, the character that's played by Sanaa Lathan at the end of her interview, she always asked everybody like, "When did you fall in love with hip hop?" So I figured I was gonna steal that, and then I would ask everybody who was on. So literally, this would be the first time I would do it, where at the
Okay.
end I would ask like, "When did you fall in love with film?" And I feel like you were about to go there,
Yeah, I think I was.
so stick a pin there,
All
and
right, I got you.
I'll give you the time to really go into that. But tell everybody um everything about you that you would want them to know.
All right, cool. Also, Rick Fumiyama is the one who directed that movie. So yes,
Yes.
black
Okay.
and
Yes.
still,
Yes. Yes.
still awesome.
Yes.
Uh, I hate to say that Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb does not like that movie.
I don't
By the
care
way.
about what Rotten Tomatoes has to say. I love that movie, man.
Yeah. So a little bit about me. Well, what do I say? I am a podcaster, a host. I am a, I became a Clubhouse revolutionary for like a week and a half. I don't know how I became Fred Hampton of Clubhouse for like 2 seconds, but it happened. It was a moment. Let's see what else. I am a blurred, very loud and proud blurred. For those who don't know, that's black and nerd together.
Yeah.
I've been I'm into. It's so odd. It's such an odd thing being a blurred, especially a one like me, because there are different levels to blurredism, and I
Yes.
don't think people understand that. Like there are like the the heavy breathing neckbeard blurs that are essentially the ones that get laughed at. Like the
They wear the Dragon Ball Z T-shirts.
yeah, yeah,
The short sleeve
there's
button
nothing even
ups.
right, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with
Oh
wearing
yeah,
a good Dragon
exactly.
Ball
Yeah.
Z t-shirt, right? But like these are the dudes that like antagonist or antagonistic against women online. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
incel level. You know what I'm saying? Like there's those, and then there's ones like me, who can put on like a fresh fit and tell you when like Jordan shot his last shot in the sneakers that I'm wearing, but also
Exactly.
can tell you the exact episode that Goku turned Super Saiyan. You know what I mean? It's just like like there's levels to it.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
I found that there's a whole lot more. I consider myself a part of that group, kind of.
yeah,
Even though I know there are people a lot more knowledgeable than me, but I really, it's funny because like I was like that saying. I always tell people like I probably would have been bullied in high school if it wasn't for the fact that I played like varsity basketball and I knew all the people who would have bullied me. So I think
right.
that's what like stopped it. So it's like I always tell people that I was a geek that knew how to camouflage and blend into my environment to where I wasn't the guy that they would have like tripped me as I was walking down the hall or something like that.
Yeah, it's odd that because I experienced bullying, but to a very small degree, and that's
Yeah,
only because I was very quick with
yeah,
it. Um, so like I developed the skill of like the dozens very early, and for those who don't understand, it was basically like trash talking. Um, so I would be able to basically verbally eviscerate my bully. Like I remember talking to somebody one time in class and having the teacher giggle, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I won that. I definitely won that. I definitely won this one." But yeah, outside of that, man, I'm a Raider fan, Laker fan, Dodger fan by proxy, just because I wear the hats.
two for three isn't 2 for 3 isn't okay is okay.
You know what I mean?
If you just went across
Outside,
the, well, I would have said if you would have went across the bay, you'd be all with me. But you guys aren't in the bay anymore, and it's just us now.
it's sad. It's a sad thing.
You're not a
Other than
fan of
that,
the move.
what's that?
You're
No,
not a.
I'm not. I'm not in this. I'm not because Al Davis died wanting the
I
Lakers,
feel.
the
I feel
Raiders to
that.
come back to come back to Los Angeles. You
I
know what I
feel
mean?
that.
Like all he ever really asked was like, just build me a stadium. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what did the city do? They gave it to. Can you curse on this?
You can go ahead. Go say
All right.
say hi. Say hi.
They gave it to fucking San Diego of all fucking. They was the goddamn Chargers and the Rams
So
again. I was just like,
I went to a game. So I struck gold twice. So obviously I get to go to a 49er game every year because they play the Rams at least once. But 2 years ago they played the Chargers as well at the Chargers home game, quote unquote. This was their first year in LA. And I went to the game. Unfortunately we lost that game, but it's one of the wildest experiences I've ever been to at any sporting event, and it's not because of anything that happened in the game. I got there knowing that I was not in San Francisco. I was not at Candlestick. I was not in Santa Clara. I was in LA there was Raiders signs and paraphernalia everywhere, but the entire stadium was red. I mean, entire. Phillip Rivers is leading the team down the field, and all you hear are chants of defense in their house. And that's when I was like, what? Like they really brought like this fanless team to LA, and all that ever happens is a team comes here and they play the Chargers, and it's just their fans. Like there aren't really Charger fans. Like, and that used to happen down in San Diego too, because I went to one game down there. It happened down there too, but at least they had a little bit. At least they would fill up like half of their stadium. But
Yeah.
like it had to have been like 80-20, like 49er fans to Chargers fans. And from what I've heard and seen, it was that way for all 8 of their home games. Is that they essentially play 16 away games, which is unfortunate. But as much as I don't like the Raiders, I would have loved to have gone to those games. But I'm not gonna lie. I got family in Vegas, and I will definitely be making trips to the Death Star.
Yeah, that's crazy. I ain't gonna lie. I was a 49er fan with Jerry Rice was catching the ball. You know, how can you not? You know what I mean? Jerry Rice, fucking goat. But what a
And then
legend.
he went to that team, which was sickening. I wanted to throw up.
Yeah, but I mean, I bounce between him and Randy Moss quite frequently. Um, but yeah, no, yeah, sports fan, blurred. I am a self-proclaimed funny guy. People laugh when I say things, so I just I don't stop them. You know what I mean?
Okay, so
So yeah,
I'm gonna ask you this. So I saw that you were, I don't know if this was your podcast or if you were a guest on a podcast called What the Force.
oh wow, you saw that? Okay, dope.
Okay, so I don't even know why I brought this up, because I feel like all this is gonna do is enrage me, and we're not here to talk about Star Wars. But every time I talk about Star Wars lately, I end up just ranting about it, and it ends up being like a rabbit hole that I'm not willing to go down. But
That's fine.
it's always cool to meet a fellow Star Wars enthusiast.
Yes.
I like to call us star. I like to call us we're like sufferers of the Force lately. Lately, I don't know. Well, we've been. I was a fan of the Mandalorian, and I really enjoyed what they did with that. And
You,
it was a good wash of the palate based off of the trilogy that we were just given.
yeah. We will definitely have to have a Star Wars conversation and find out where we align. So my Star Wars story is actually pretty funny because that whole thing, the what the Force happened, very ironically. So, for any, I'm also a video gamer. Which is such a weird thing to say, like it's a goddamn profession. I'm a video gamer.
Well, now for a lot of
And
people, it
now it
is
is.
now.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Now it is. But I play video games, and there is a video game called Into the Borderlands.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. For people are familiar. So the studio behind that is Gearbox, and Gearbox is located here in Texas in Frisco. So the owner or a CEO of that company, his wife opened up a cafe and a video game bar and restaurant themed joint down here
Oh, nice.
that's connected to the Gearbox Studios, right? So we went down there and ended up befriending uh, and not really, but I mean, kind of, sort of befriending some of the crew there, and they were telling us how they had this space that they wanted to use as like a podcasting space, and we was like, we do podcasting, and it was like, oh well, we kind of wanted to be e-games or Star Wars, and my friend who was really into Star Wars was like, oh, we could do Star Wars, and I at the time did not know anything about Star Wars. Outside of the peripheral stuff of like, I knew the Luke is your father spoilers.
Yeah.
I knew that all that stuff existed, but I wasn't like it. I didn't have anyone to introduce it to me as a kid, right? So it just glossed over me as I grew older. So they wanted to do the Star Wars podcast, and I was telling my friend, I was like, yo, what am I going to do on this show? Because I don't know a shit about Star Wars. And he was like, well, you can just host it. And I was like, all right, cool. So I ended up doing the hosting part for the show, right? And then we ended up doing it live. So I ended up being kind of like the window for viewers who were like entry level, right? What it allowed me to do though is allowed me to really shit talk and bullshit things to get them upset because I didn't know anything about the universe. So so I could ask these questions that would seem obvious to like a regular fan, But for me and for people who maybe didn't know anything about it, it kind of gave them like an entryway to like watch, right?
Yeah.
So because it was live, people got to ask questions right away, and we made up bits on the fly. So one of the bits that ended up being a thing every week was deals with the Empire, where I would basically pitch ideas that Star Wars hasn't come up with yet. So, so like one time I was like, why hasn't Star Wars done anything with Jordan? Like where where is this at? Where is this collab at that we're not getting, right? So I would do these type of things, and the whole gag was like they would hate my pitches, but the people in the chat would fucking love them. So
Oh,
people
so
was like, yes,
people you were hosting or you were on the show with hated it, but the fans loved it.
yes, yes. So it was like a real big thing. So like we made graphics for it and everything is fire. And then later down the road, I get Disney Plus. I end up watching all the Star Wars, everything, and fucking falling in love with all of it. So yes, at one point in time, we'll definitely have to have an in-depth Star Wars conversation. But yes, I'm a Star Wars fan now. I don't have knowledge of like the books and stuff like that, so
Me
I'm
neither.
still lost in that.
So the same way that you said that there are varying levels of the blurs, there's also varying levels of Star Wars fandom. And
Yes.
I'll tell you right now, I'm not as knowledgeable when it comes to like the entire canon and like all those readings. For me, mostly my fandom has remained with what's on the screen. I've done a little bit of reading just for my own interest, but not to the point where I could like tell you you're wrong if you say something about some guy and that's not canon. I'm not really there. It's not that. I don't care that much. I'm just into fantasy, so I enjoy it. But I'm about to play you some. I wonder if you can hear it. I'm playing it through my phone. I had a friend of mine. His name was Hassan on, and he was on an earlier episode, and we talked a little bit about um, episode 9, and
Yeah.
he had pretty strong feelings. But let me know if you can hear this.
Okay.
Well, let's.
I don't hate the ending.
Well, so I think the ending of the movie is it's not only the worst part of that movie. The last 15 minutes of the Rise of Skywalker may be the worst 15 minutes in any movie I've ever seen. Antonio, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have to agree with him.
So we so I yeah, see that's how you could tell we could go down of a lot of rabbit holes when it comes to that. But yeah, I mean, I guess all this interesting is about how finding out. I mean, we knew this, but other people finding out that black people are not like monolithic. Like there are different kinds of black people, and
Yeah.
like we're like black people can be layered, you know.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I I know guys that like love comics and will shoot you if they need to, and it's like they'll in like both of them they're like both and like they'll argue with you about Hulk, but then
Mhm.
they'll shoot you if you did so it's like um yeah, that's probably the most interesting thing that I found is how many black people that I know that are into like anime, into comics, into um, those things that maybe like 20 years ago we would have said was reserved for like geeks and nerds or whatever. So, but uh, speaking of black people, I
Yeah.
figured why not take any and every occasion that I can to um, big up black directors. I want to make it a habit myself of doing that. I know it's tough because there's so much going on in all of our lives, so we can't always do it. But unfortunately, it seems like we don't really give people their flowers until they're gone.
Mhm.
And I think there are a lot of black directors that just don't get talked about as much as they should compared to their white counterparts. Um, so yeah, I don't ever want that to be a thing that I'm guilty of is not giving those amazing men and women their just due and their honor whenever I can do it. So I didn't ask you, but do you have I'll keep it top 5. Do you have a top 5 black directors list?
Um, yeah, probably.
Or if
I've
it's
never
or if
really
it's easier, who is your favorite? I don't want to get into best or who's better, but who is your favorite black director? Like if this man or this woman is making something, it's like you're already gonna watch it.
Yeah. I would probably say, I mean, I could probably give you five.
Oh, go ahead.
It would probably be Robert Townsend, Spike Lee, Ryan Coogler,
Mm-hmm.
John Singleton, and Ava DuVernay, which feels like a who's list,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a ton, but their line of stuff that they've done over like a course of history has been some of my favorite things to watch. Like they've done such like incredible stuff that I they're undeniable to me in terms of really great directors that can still outside of John Singleton, rest in peace,
Yeah.
that can still do good stuff. You know.
I mean, I think I've mentioned this story a couple times on this podcast, but there's an interview I seen of I think it was Denzel, and it was when they were doing their press run for Fences,
Mm.
and there was a woman that asked him a question. I don't remember exactly what the question was about, but it had to do with um, black directors, black storytellers, and I can only assume that the woman asking the question is black because the questions he asked made me assume that she had to have been black. But
Mm-hmm.
he said it's not so much about like race or ethnicity, but it's about culture. And he asked her, he told her, he was like, you and I both know the sound of a hot comb hitting black hair. And it's crazy because when he said that, like I heard it and I smelled it.
When you said it, I saw it happening on the stove.
Yes, and then
Like I
and then
saw
you could
my mother laying that on the stove,
and then you could see
perplexed.
and then you see her putting it on a paper towel and then it leaving the burn mark on the paper towel. Like
Yeah,
I can feel all of that. So it's like when it comes to black storytellers, it's not even that so much that they tell different stories. I think from a basic human standpoint, like we all deal with the same things, but there's that amount. It's almost like the way you cook a chicken is the way you cook a chicken. Like there's not really. I mean, you heat it up until it's edible. I mean, that's really what it is. But you give that chicken to 5 different people, and they'll all put their own flavor into it. And like for most of like Hollywood history, we were only getting like one. We were only getting chicken from like one recipe book.
yeah,
And it's like, well, what happens if you give this person that same chicken? How are they gonna make it? What types of season are they gonna add to it that's going to give a different perspective or a different layer? Which,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I think to that point, it's about acknowledgement, right? Like you said, it's beyond the fact that it's about like race and ethnicity. It's about the fact of acknowledgement, right? Like people want to feel like somebody sees them, right? That's just a basic human, need
exactly.
and want. And when you're watching something, right? I mean, almost everyone watches TV and film in some capacity, um, and when they see that, uh, they internalize that in one way or another, right? So when you're inundated by these images over and over and over again, and you never ever see anything that relates to you, that's either going to drastically change the way you perceive the world, or it's going to make you relatively sad that even if you don't know it, that you don't get to see anything that represents the stuff that you have as a daily existence, right? Like it diminishes how you feel.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big piece of a conversation that gets missed and glossed over when people talk about like inclusivity and stuff like that. Is like, fam, people just want want to feel included. You know what I mean? Like we exist on the same world that you do. We all are on this rock together. It'd be nice if you included me as a
Every
person that's here.
and everyone does, but for some reason, when black people ask for it, some people like wag their fingers at the idea. But it's like
Right.
all of us, even if we're not talking about race, let's just say you saw or you heard that, hey, this guy is from your hometown. Then like there's this feeling of connection because it's like, wow, this guy represents the city that I was born in or the street that I was born in, or he went to the same school that I went to. So there's always these ways of connection, and we root for people typically because, I mean, that's why people are fans of teams. It's because they represent an area that you're from and you love that area so much. And whenever people ask, I use that same, you know, example to say that it goes the same with race. Where it's like when you see somebody who looks like you doing the normal things that you do, it makes it just like you get to be seen. Like, oh wow, there's somebody that actually looks like my uncle,
Hmm.
or like, wow, she kind of reminds me of my sister, or you know, which is what we're being able to see now. But what I want to ask is, do you think we've gotten to the point where, or I don't think we have. Well, let me ask you, do you think we've gotten to the point where like where black creatives, and I'm gonna limit it to black creatives. I know there's a lot of groups that aren't being represented,
Hmm.
but do you think we've gotten to that point where um they are given a relatively fair shake when it comes to black directors and their opportunities versus white directors?
I think no, and hopefully nobody kills me for this, but I think the Black American specifically uh, is not given or awarded the same type of acknowledgement that needs to happen, because when we're talking about, like, let's say like Asian Americans, or whether it's talking about Eastern or Western, when you get into like an Indian
Yeah.
perspective, or like even Latino, or Latina X, right? Those groups, although they are also underrepresented in American television, have a stronger connection of culture to where they came from, right? Like
Yes.
uh, their immigrant story is very still real for them, right? Even if they're like third and fourth generation removed, they still can. Most of them can say that they have family in Japan or China, or Mexico or Honduras or whatever, right? So like, there's still a sense of connectivity that they have. There's a thread that they can move back to
Yeah.
that black people don't have in this country. So because of that, if they were to take a plane trip to Japan, or wherever they're from, right, they're going to enter into a world where it's all them, right? We can do that by going to Africa, but the sense of connectivity is not the same,
Yeah.
right? Because
When we go
most of the
there,
time when we visit
yeah,
when
they know we're
we're
not
not
from
visiting
there.
Africa, right? We're not
Yeah.
visiting Africa to visit an uncle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's not happening for us. So the representation of Black America is still too way underdeveloped than it is anywhere else, because of that loss of connectivity to our sense of self. So the only thing we have as connective tissue outside of slavery, from Africa, is our Black American experience. So that has to be shown more, in my personal opinion, than it is right now. And that's not saying that, again, that the other people, other races, don't deserve a fair shake. That they definitely do. I just feel like underrepresentation for Black Americans is definitely something that has to be talked about more.
I think it stands out even more because though we have the least amount of connective tissue to any other place, our culture is probably the strongest,
Yeah,
and
I
it's
would
the
agree.
most, at least here, it's the most copied.
Mm.
And it's been that way for like at least 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
where, and we see it a lot, which kind of brings it to what we're talking about today in the arts and the idea of um, audible expression and visual expression. A lot of that is influenced by black people.
Yeah.
So I think it's even more infuriating. I think it's one thing to just not ever talk about us. It's another thing to talk about us all the time, but not let us talk about us.
That's a good point. That's a bar.
Which is the funny thing. I mean, it's like, don't get me wrong, Color Purple is great, but it's like Steven Spielberg did that.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, I get it. I get the way that the system has always ran. And to me, I just believe in telling the truth when it comes to this genre. I think even if you're doing fiction or fantasies, you still have to tell the truth. Like, you have to be honest about people's intentions, their motivations, and all that stuff. And that really only happens when you're open to hear and listen to different people. And then, just quite frankly, sometimes you just can't really accurately speak about someone else's experience because you haven't been through it. Like, there's only so much. I mean, I could read anything. I could read any and everything about the Holocaust, but I still don't really. I can't ever really feel what that is, what it's like to have lived through that, to have had a grandparent that survived that. Like, I don't know what that is, so I would lean towards someone who has experienced that, and I'd rather them tell that story, and I'd rather do what I can to give them that platform. But when it comes here, it's like, even when they were making fun of us, instead of having a black person on the screen, they would have had a white person on the screen and painted his or her face black, which is kind of wild. But so
I was gonna say, even
yeah, go ahead.
Even to your point, to bring it to current, when you were talking about The Color Purple, Malcolm and Marie, written and directed by a white guy.
So okay, so I had Cam on last week, and we talked about that movie. We didn't really go into that, but I do know that there was some criticism about that, and the fact that you had essentially a black story, I guess you could call it that, but you had it told by a white guy. And
Well, I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a black story. I would say that it's a relationship story. Some may say an abusive or complicated or toxic.
Of course, yes, very toxic.
But I think it's a story that involves blackness, right? Because of the way the main characters are portrayed, right? Like,
yeah,
he's specifically a black artist, a black director who's trying to relay this information out to us, the audience, of like what it's like to make a movie that he sees fit for every audience, not just black people, right? So a lot of people say, "Oh, why are you so like in depth?" Well, I was like, well, if we don't parse through it ourselves, right, that means it gives license to other people like that to make whatever story they want about something that they may not necessarily have an entitlement to, right? So, for example, in that movie, which, by the way, the director of the movie, I enjoy his work.
Same here.
Euphoria.
Same here.
Yeah, like I love Euphoria. I think it's a fantastic show, and a lot of people were trying to go off the whole like the black dude always gonna be with a light skinned girl, this type thing. I mean, like,
I have to admit that now that's not my gripe, but I have heard that, and I've heard that a lot from women, and I don't want to, discount what they have to say, but I have heard that you'll put a dark male on there, but you won't put a dark woman on there.
Yeah, the argument is valid.
Yeah.
I just feel like for this particular movie, it's a hard one to have because the main star of his show, of course, he's going to offer that role to something he's working on.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
The only way this worked is because of their previous relationship and the fact that they were able to squeeze this out in the middle of a pandemic. So it's like we don't have a bunch of resources. Everything's shut down. How can we make a story fairly quickly and fairly easily? It's probably better to just work with somebody who I'm used to working with. And
right, yeah. So in this case, in this scenario, I can't say that that's like the ultimate thing of what happened. Although the narrative is correct,
Yeah.
right? But in that movie, right, there are really, really to the actor's credit, right? I can't say his name right now. John David Washington.
Yeah.
To John David Washington's credit, acted beautifully, right? Like the monologues he delivers are done very, very well. He acts them very, very well. But when you listen to the words of the monologue, right,
Mm-hmm.
of him like, why can a black person just make a movie that doesn't have to be delivered or criticized by some white person about his blackness, right? I can agree with this sentiment, but knowing that it's coming from a white person's mouth feels odd.
So the way I took that is I honestly felt like this was a director that was just wanted to get some stuff off his chest.
Exactly.
And
Like,
I felt like I felt like he wanted to tell a universal story about directors, which is why I don't think he just talked about race. He talked about the relationship with film critics, and I think the biggest thing was a creative and how it can negatively or positively affect their home life. And I don't know exactly why he chose it to come from why he wanted his character to be black.
right,
I,
yeah.
I will say that didn't bother me, but I can't say that I didn't think about it.
Yeah, like it definitely was him getting his shit off, right? And the lens that he tried to explain himself felt odd because like I never watched it as if like this black director is getting these words out. It always felt like this white director is using this black puppet
Yes,
to get his
yes.
stuff off. And I was just like, that's such an odd thing to choose to do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't disagree with the words that are saying, but like, it feels odd that you're using this person as a conduit to get your feelings out
And I will
because
say this.
it feels so blatant. It feels so like I
Yeah,
clearly can tell it's the director
yeah. It
getting
felt
it off and
forced.
not Malcolm, right?
It
I don't
felt
feel like it's the
forced.
character Malcolm saying this. I feel like it's you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, okay. So my thing was, as I'm watching this, is there was a lot of what was going on, which is the only part that was really like I overall enjoyed the movie. I can't really watch it again because it's just too much. It's too heavy. There's a lot going on, and it's just not the movie that you just put on in the background while you're washing dishes. Like it's a
Yeah,
heavy movie.
it's not a rewatchable
Yeah,
film for me.
it's a heavy movie. But I have to admit I did feel at times where I was like, is this something that black people would do? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if we're arguing at 2 o'clock in the morning like this. I feel like we're good at like, all right, I'm not dealing with this right now. I'm out of here. I'm going to I'm gonna go to sleep. Y'all deal with what you. So to your point, the rant didn't feel real. Like the rant felt like, yeah, I'm gonna put this in, and I want you to say this with passion because this is how I feel, and I want you to be my mouthpiece for this. And I mean, movies don't have to be 100% real. I mean, obviously, I mean, even movie dialogue. Um, I talk about this a lot. Movie dialogue is not real life dialogue. Like people don't usually just talk and then stop, and then the next person talk and they stop. People
Right.
talk and they skip over their words, and then someone interrupts them, and then something happens in the background that catch. You know, there's just obviously there's a poetry to cinematic dialogue.
Yeah.
Um, and it's okay. I mean, and again, I'm saying this as a Tarantino fan. Obviously, you know, with monologues, like there's no way this happens in real life.
Yeah.
Um,
My favorite, not to cut you off, my favorite thing that happens in a movie in terms of dialogue is when two characters are in a room and then one character is like looking away from that person
yeah,
and speaking. I was like, that doesn't happen in real life. Nobody turns their back and like gives a couple of words and then either walks away or continues. That's not a thing.
yeah. I mean, but you have to block a scene in the way they turn around and they play with something and then come back. Like that's not really that authentic. Now people do things while they're talking to people, but usually it's not with during intense conversations or whatever. But um, Yeah, that's an interesting note. Because that is one, and honestly, that was my one critique of Euphoria is I didn't feel like these were high school students talking. I felt like this was a director who has an opinion about, and not even that the opinions were wrong, but it just felt like like what high school students talk like this. Like I don't know, maybe they changed since I was in high school, but it did feel like there was an extra umph to the dialogue, where it's like the director has an opinion about this and he wants to use these actors as the mouthpiece for him to make his statement on whatever the topic is. But yeah, I do now wonder what is Malcolm and Marie like with a black director, and I don't know exactly how it changes. I tend to believe that conversation doesn't go the same. I just don't know how many black women that I could talk to that way, where they're just gonna just not try to kill me. Like I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think we would get a fundamentally different movie. I feel like a lot of the sentiment would be the same, which is like these two people who work in this industry of film are having a conversation, and on top of that, an argument. Right,
Yeah,
like I feel like that premise would still exist,
yeah,
but I think the delivery would be vastly different. I don't think Marie would play the same. Um, I think Marie would would act very differently than she did in there, because there was a lot of like manipulation in my games for both of them, right?
yeah.
But there's just certain things like the making the macaroni and cheese scene and him eating it. It was just such an odd. There was just odd things that was in the movie. You know what I mean? Like this feels very weird,
Yeah, he
and it
ate it.
doesn't feel like a black experience.
Yeah, he ate that mac and cheese with I don't know like I felt like in the script like he wrote eats mac and cheese and put like exclamation marks at the end of eats mac because he ate it
Yeah, he
with
ate it with some
intensity.
zest.
There was a lot.
Yeah,
There's
he had a lot of zest when he was eating that.
so um yeah, so but we contrast that to a movie that came out a week or two after that, like Judas and the Black Messiah,
Mm.
which does come from a black director,
Mm-hmm.
and you can feel the flavor.
Yeah, 100%.
Like Malcolm and
100.
Marie tastes good, but it didn't have the same seasonings.
No.
It didn't have the same flavor. And
Mm-mm.
I even though I did enjoy some of the music that they played in
Oh
Malcolm
yeah.
and Marie, I thought some of those choices were very interesting, letting the music kind of speak in times when the
Mm-hmm.
characters weren't. Um, but yeah, so I mean, in talking about stuff that's coming out or that has just recently come out, I don't know if you're a fan of Snowfall, but
Oh, huge fan.
that comes out soon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'll ask you this: so getting to even more talking about black directors, black creatives, we have this story that is produced, or what at least was produced by John Singleton. And okay, so I noticed this. I'm giving part of your business out, but I noticed that
That's good.
you had an 818.
Yeah. Uh huh.
So I was like, okay. So I in watching this movie, obviously, I'm only 32. I wasn't really aware of what was going on in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
but watching Snowfall and with the knowledge that um Singleton was behind the scenes,
Yeah.
I could feel it. And this is also another aspect where it's not just about race, but it is also about culture, because I didn't just feel the black experience, but I also felt the LA experience, which it's funny because I don't know if we would do that the same way. Like, would you get somebody who's not from Miami to tell stories about movies that take place in Miami? So it's like I don't know why we do that with when it comes to black people, but
Hmm.
I did feel like yeah, this feels L.A. to me.
Right. Yeah.
So
No, you definitely get that sense of authenticity that I think John Singleton is really good at in all of his works.
were you able to tell the difference, or did you feel a difference at all between the different seasons, knowing that he had kind of waned in his health, and then eventually I don't know if he passed before or after if they finished three. I'm not sure, but I would assume that maybe if his health was waning, that he probably had a little bit less of his hands in in the pot, kind of. Could you tell
Right.
any drop off, or did it kind of all feel pretty cohesive?
It still, as I was watching, still felt pretty cohesive. I think it's because a lot of times, if you're really good of laying a foundation and blueprint,
Yeah,
somebody else can come in there and work off that. That just speaks to the credit and the talent of John Singleton, right? Like he was able to develop something, and this doesn't happen to me often, but like when you're watching something and then the credits roll and you see a name, you're like, oh shit, I didn't
yeah,
know. So you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like I remember when I watched, not to get too far off topic, but I remember when I watched Insecure for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and after episode one, right? Because I didn't know about her like web series, right? I
Okay.
didn't know that's how that like came to be. I was not familiar with it in
Yeah.
any sense of the film. But when I got done watching episode one, I was like, damn, that was really fucking good. And then the credits roll, and then I see the name Larry Wilmore, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh shit, that's crazy. Because I used to watch Larry Wilmore all the time when he had his own show on Comedy Central, when he took over for that time slot when uh, Stephen uh, Stephen Colbert went over to primetime.
Yeah.
Um, and I really, really love Larry Wilmore's like comedy and take, right? So when he ended up when I saw his name, I was like, oh, cool, that's dope. I mean, it made me want to watch more. Is my point. So when that happened to me when I was watching Snowfall, and it got to the end, I didn't know it was a John Singleton production, right? Like it gets to the end, and I was like, huh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense because this was really fucking good. I definitely got the Los Angeles vibes. I definitely got the Boys in the Hood style vibes when I was watching it, right? And it's you have to be really, really good at something to have a signature, because for people to recognize your signature is a special thing
Yeah.
to do, right? Like uh, we've all seen it, right? Like Spike Lee has a signature, right? Like with his camera pans with the artist, being on the dolly.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a signature move for Spike Lee. You're watching a Spike Lee film when you get that type of look, right? Or J.J. Abrams with the lens flare type thing. Like they have a signature style and feel and look is a credit to your talent, and John Singleton really nails that, especially when it comes to like a West Coast style aesthetic, and not just West Coast, but like specifically Black West Coast.
Yeah.
And he captures time capsules really well in his work. So yeah, as I remember watching episode one because I got to it very late. Like I wasn't watching it when it was like on television.
Snowfall.
Still, like yeah, like
No,
I have
yeah.
Hulu.
I just watched all the seasons in January. So
Yeah.
I
Uh,
just recently caught up with everything, and it was like maybe from the first second episode, I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm in.
yeah, yeah. So when his name rolled up, I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, dope. This is nice." I didn't know he was involved in this, but it all makes sense. Like all it's like when you put that final puzzle piece in the
You know,
in the
I
puzzle, it's like, "Oh yeah,
yeah, I felt the same about Insecure, and the same thing happened when I was watching Luke Cage. It's like when Insecure, knowing that Solange was like a music consultant, and
mm-hmm.
I believe in Insecure, not in Insecure, on Luke Cage, it was Raphael Sadiq, and you could tell, and it's like again we're just talking about primarily directors here, but it goes beyond that. It's just it who is doing your hair and makeup, because we've seen that a whole lot
Yeah,
where like they got these black women looking crazy, because they got somebody who don't know how to deal with black skin or black hair, and then they end up looking a hot mess. And like there's a lot that just goes to having people who are familiar with the subject being able to accurately tell the story. And I think that all came to a head in a movie like Black Panther, which is why I think it was such a big hit, because
Yeah.
all the way around you had people who had the right backgrounds, the right knowledge, the right influences that made that movie feel authentic. Even though we're talking about a fictional place, it still
Hmm.
felt authentic to the continent, which I know was Coogler's goal all along. So okay, I'll ask you this. So we could fanboy all day about some of the older greats, Singleton, Spike Lee, but of this new wave, and I won't just say movie directors. I would also say TV directors, because I like to throw Issa in there. I like to throw Donald Glover in there. Um, who are you most excited about? What they can become as far as the next wave of black creatives.
Um, are we talking about directors specifically?
Yeah, I guess we can go to producers, kind of, but just people who are creating the stuff that we're watching.
Um, hmm. I'm trying to think of the stuff that I've seen. I mean, I guess Ryan Coogler is still, he's not a rookie, but
Yeah,
he's definitely still new. And I think he's outside of Ava DuVernay, who is like, I think at this point battle tested.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. She's accredited.
yeah, like I feel like she's like foothold is established, right?
Yeah,
I think Ryan is probably the next person that's like I want to see more from. Um,
as a form of like, not that you're not bought in, but because you want to see more, or because you feel like he's arrived and you just want to see him get more shots up.
I want to see more because like the stuff that he's put out so far, I've really liked.
Yeah,
Um, so it's one of those things of like the sophomore look. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Like, all right, you killed it when you did this. Black Panther is for the most part universally and critically acclaimed.
Yeah,
Um, what else can you do? You know what I mean? And I think the real test of that, not to say that black actors can't stay within a black lane if they want to, but the real test of that would be like if he ever stretches his legs and directs something else, like a full blown action movie
yeah.
that stars a black character, but it's not necessarily a black story.
He was a
You know what I mean?
producer, I
Because
believe, on Judas and the Black Messiah.
yeah, I heard he was involved, but I didn't know to what degree.
Yeah, me either.
But I know there is a lot of new people that's gonna come up. Um, I just don't know what those. I haven't seen any of those films yet.
Yeah.
But I know there's new people all the time floating around, coming in. But currently, right now, it's definitely him.
So right now, we already spoke about Issa. I'm a fan of Issa. I'm really a fan of Donald Glover. I really love what he's been doing. Matter of fact, something just happened with him. He just signed a deal.
Oh, I heard with Amazon, right?
I think so. I don't know if it was like so the number 10 is sticking out to me. I don't know if it was like 10 movies or 10 million or both. I don't remember. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't include Jordan Peele,
yeah,
and Donald
dang.
Glover. I didn't include them only because um, it's only one project out from both of them on the TV side, and there's no movie yet from Donald Glover, so I didn't include them because of that.
He did
I
do the
know
one.
Candid.
He did do the one picture. Guava Island, the one with him and
Um,
Rihanna. It was on Amazon,
right. I didn't watch
which
it,
was
so I can't
nice. I
speak to
watched
it.
it. It was okay. It was nice.
It was okay. Yeah, I didn't catch that one, but I didn't hear any. anything bad about it. I just didn't hear anything like glowing review about it either.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting with him, or because with Donald, I also bring in like knowing I wasn't a big fan of it, but I know he wrote for Community, and I think he also wrote a little bit for 30 Rock. So I
Yeah,
know,
I've heard.
so I know when it comes to him and telling stories, I know he's good at it because it seems like everything that he's involved, and I do believe. I don't know if he was credited for it, but I do believe that he assisted Coogler, him and his brother assisted Coogler in the script for Black Panther.
Now
Um,
his brother may be the true talent when it
yeah,
comes to behind the lens.
yeah.
Because I know his brother was deeply involved to the stuff on Atlanta.
Well, he
Um,
writes a lot. I know his guy. I know his guy is Hero Murray that I think that I think directs a lot of his stuff, and I think directed a
yeah,
lot of his music videos as well. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Jordan Peele. I, I'm really excited about what he's doing because like one of the things that I've always been big on is this idea of telling telling stories that aren't like that aren't forced black stories, like,
right. I feel you.
and like this idea that okay, Get Out, yeah, that was a statement and that obviously had to be black, but you think of a movie like Us, and that movie could have easily been a white family, and
Right.
most of nothing changes, which to me is okay because like again we opened up this pod talking about black people and Dragon Ball Z, and this idea that there are stories that can be told about us that don't have to involve drugs or gangs or jail or
Yeah.
slavery or the
Yeah.
civil rights era, and this
hmm
idea that you can tell just basic human stories that just happen to be about black people and then that have of course those slight sensibilities and things that are unique, but the fact that he's been doing that in the horror thriller genre to me is what's interesting because I really love that genre, and it's funny that's one of the genre that has some of the biggest stereotypes, especially when it comes, because we always die in
First.
the horror thriller. We're always the ones that go out first, and we usually always go out being like the black savior, the magical Negro.
hmm
Like we
Yeah.
go out either giving the best advice that nobody listens to, or we go off sacrificing ourselves for, And it's funny even
Whatever white
watching
person.
what was that movie Birdcage, and my man I forget his name. He was also in Moonlight, but he dies.
Not Mahershala Ali, is it?
No, the one who played the main character as
Oh,
as as the older version of himself.
I can't remember
Um,
his name.
but yeah, he dies saving Julia Roberts' character. Not Julia Robert. I forget her name. But yeah, he
uh, yeah, no, the horror genre is one of my favorites. Like I love a good scary movie, but that is the one black people are.
Trevante Rhodes. That's his name.
Oh, okay, that's the one that we're like highly
Highly disrespected
underrepresented.
in, and it's like a lot of those tropes that we laugh at because they're funny, but it's like it's like two sided. On one side, it's like black people always die in it, but then on the other side, it's like the stories are always about white people doing stupid stuff and us
Right,
laughing. Like, why are you even doing that? Like, you actually
right.
deserve everything happening to you.
Yes,
Why
exactly.
would you walk into that dilapidated building in the middle of Texas? Like, it's your
hmm
fault that this is happening to you because you're
Right.
stupid and you don't know how to mind your own business. There is kind of like that idea that black people have this sixth sense about things, and that like we can smell in the air when something is going on, and
Right.
you always know if you see black people getting up and leaving, you should probably leave too because there's a reason why we're getting up out of there. Yeah, but
Right. Yeah.
I love that he's coming from that genre. But
Yeah.
if I really can say who I'm really, and again, we only have two movies, but it's uh Barry Jenkins. and
Thank you.
he's given us Moonlight and If Beale Street Can Talk,
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
and he comes from, and I also wanted to talk about this a little bit, and I don't know if you have had any time to think about this, but this idea that we're having these newer studios coming up that aren't like Fox, NBC, Universal, like those the Titans, but
Yeah.
we have the well, even though Netflix is a giant, I'll include Netflix as kind of like the indie filmmaker studio.
Hmm.
But you have them, and you have like Neon, who helped produce Parasite, and you have A24,
Hmm.
and I believe both of Barry's films are A24.
Okay. Yeah,
And
I think A24 is really good studio.
so I think I really enjoyed both of those movies. I thought both of them were beautifully done, and I'm interested in knowing in seeing what's next for him. Um, but yeah, I would like to say that I believe the future is bright. And listen, if we're gonna talk about black directors, I have to give this man his flowers, and I will always do it. But you know, we got to give Tyler Perry his flowers. We have to. And it's like
Who? It cut out there, right? You
Tyler
said it.
Perry.
Oh well.
Well, here's why.
So
Here's why.
I'm so
I
conflicted
know.
with
I
Tyler
know.
Perry.
I know. Here's why. I and here's the thing. Here's why I didn't want this podcast to be about who was better, who was worse, what we liked, what we didn't like so much,
Hmm.
because what I am a fan more of his is the opportunities that he's created and the space that he's given himself to be able to do whatever he wants. And I can't be mad at Tyler Perry doing whatever he wants when we know Hollywood green lights some world class trash
Terrible shit.
all the time. And I am never gonna be upset at a guy like Tyler Perry saying, I'll build my own playground to play in. I may not like the toys that come, you know, it's okay, but I'm excited at the fact that he's done this for himself and has, because I know if I've gotten the privilege to meet and work with a few black actors who have been given jobs because of him, and I'm hoping that that's the spark of a new wave of black creatives that kind of take things into their own hands
Yeah.
and create their own rooms and give other people space to operate in those rooms, since we don't often get that space and freedom um, in some of the major studios. So, uh, yeah,
No,
I
I
don't.
agree. I mean, so like for me, it's such a multifaceted thing with me when it comes to Tyler Perry.
Yeah,
So, did you watch Black AF?
a little bit.
Okay, so I was one of the people in the minority that really enjoyed Black AF, and this is coming from somebody who does not enjoy Blackish or the Blackish series and universe or whatever you want to call it.
You know what?
Um,
I put Blackish in the same category as Tyler Perry. I may not be the biggest fan of the show, but hey, I'm all for the show being. I'm all for the show existing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So when it came to Blackish, it felt, even when I saw the promo material for it, it felt like a show that had black people but was for a white audience.
Yes.
And I was like, you're not telling me a black person something that I don't already know, right?
Yes. This was
And,
Blackish is not for us. I
right.
figured that out pretty early. Blackish is this is for you white people, and we're
Yeah,
gonna
to
make
get like
sure. Yeah.
a peephole
Exactly.
type view of like black perspective,
Yeah.
right? And what like a black family that's
But
like
but
multi
still
layered
but still a
looks
watered
like.
down black perspective,
Oh
kind of.
yeah,
You know.
100%,
Yeah.
100%, right? So because of that, I never looked into who created the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when Black AF came out, I had no idea, zero clue that's who that was, right? So when they're doing the opening for Black AF, right, and he talks about himself being the person who made all of those things, right? I was
Yeah.
like, oh shit, I
Yep.
didn't know this was, right? And then as the story progresses, there are things that happen uh, that I was like, I remember somebody texted me. It was like, "LA, if you had kids, this is how you would talk to them." I was like, probably, probably would, right? I imagine. So I viewed it in a way that other Black people did not, and I don't know if that's because I'm light skinned and the experience that I with is different from somebody who's darker skinned than me.
Yeah.
But like as I was watching it and seeing the reactions online, people were mad about the family looking the way they did, and then
Yes.
I looked at his family. I was like, it looks just like his family. What are they talking about, right?
Yeah.
So like I didn't give it. I gave it way more space, right? I gave it way more grace when it came to that. But the arguments are valid. And then people argued about like how he spoke, right, and how he talked and how he acted, and the kids being the way they are. And I was like, he is telling a story about a very affluent Black family,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is not the Cosbys. You know what I mean? Like these are very much inundated into the hip hop culture
Yeah.
Black family, right? And they give you that like very much very early, right? Where they have his wife his wife with the Lamborghini who's like, yo, if you don't buy this, if you buy this, I'll fuck the guy who has, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so they kind of lay that tone very early, right? So it's not like jarring as it continues on because they kind of keep that theme throughout. But the episodes, just to tie us back to Tyler Perry, the episodes that made me respect this series and Tyler Perry in the same instance was he and his daughter watch a movie together, which is made by a Black director, and you never see the movie in the show, but you know that it's probably has something to do with like Blackness, right?
Yeah.
Both him and his daughter have the same reaction of like, this is garbage.
Yeah.
Like why you know what I mean? Like why is everybody enjoying this so much, right? And then he gets on like a call, like a group call with like other Black creators like Ava DuVernay and Issa Rae and stuff like that, right? And they're all talking about like his work and their works, right? And it was like, yo, Blackish like is not for us. You know what I mean? Like honestly, fam, like that shit's kind of trash. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so, like as they were like putting it together, I was like, oh wow, yes, okay. They all talk amongst each other about these issues, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was really honorable of him to like be that vulnerable about like his own work and how it's perceived, right? And I think because a lot of people gave up on the show, they never got that far, right? To like get that message of like, look, I hear you. I know this is what people are saying. Even the people of my own caliber say these things. You know what I mean? And I'm still going to do it regardless, right? And then they get to the part where they talk to Tyler Perry, and Tyler Perry kind of gives that same conversation. I was like, I don't give a fuck what other people think. I'm going to do this, right? So like, I respect Tyler Perry in that regard. The flip coin of that is, I'm not going to watch a Tyler Perry film because I know what's going. Like, it's so badly acted most of the time. The things that, in terms of like practical makeup and costume design, are
Yeah.
usually really, really poor. And the part that bothers me is that because he has so much money, he could do higher quality stuff
So what
if
I've
he wanted
heard,
to.
and this is from people who have either worked directly with him or know people that have worked with him, is that he is a machine and he's always trying to pump stuff out, which means you're not getting 3 takes. You get your 1 take, maybe a second take, and we're on to the next. We're on to the next scene. So, like, I think what's the one movie that just came out and hit Netflix?
I don't remember, but
Like,
I remember my grandma and my mom watching it. I'm just like, I can't believe, I can't believe. But that's his demographic, right? Our aunts and mothers and grandmothers is his demographic, and he knows that. He
so
knows that. He builds stuff based off of that. And I'm just watching them, just like, her. What is like the you know how you talk about dialogue is not real?
yeah.
Like that dialogue was so cringy and bad. I was just like, how are y'all watching this?
So the
There's
movie
no
is
plot.
so it's called A Fall from Grace. My God. So we're talking about Rotten Tomato. This is
Yeah.
16%. That's terrible.
That's honestly
But
better than I thought.
but
Better than I
yeah,
thought it would be.
so there were rumors that like he shot that whole movie in like 3 weeks, and it's like, oh my, like, so,
Wow.
but I think that's just because he's just trying to pump out as much content as he can, and he's just pushing it out. Literally, like I use the term machine, and I don't mean that to be positive or negative, but just the idea that because he's not just doing movies. He's got like 5 or 6 TV shows going on, like at the same
Hmm.
time. So
Yeah.
he's just putting that stuff out. But again, if you know, and that's the interesting thing about where movies and TVs are going now. It's like you think about television in like the 70s, and like they had to make a, like, I think that's why a lot of the shows in the 70s have lasted so long, is because
Yeah.
they had to make shows for everybody, because chances are like these people in the 60s and 70s didn't have 5 different TVs in every room like we do now, and there weren't a whole bunch of channels. So the chances are the entire family sat around the TV and watched. So we had to have a
Hmm.
show like Happy Days that had the slight mix of jokes for the family, but it also had to be safe for your 5-year-old kid to be there. And
Yeah.
I think because they're so universally made, that's why today we can still kind of watch them and they still kind of, but I think what's happening, and like it's the transition that I think started to happen in kind of like the 90s, is this idea that like movies and TV shows can be like for smaller groups.
Yeah.
Like I'm not necessarily making this for everybody to like it, because it's not made for everybody. Like this is made for a select group of people, and as long as they're okay with it, then I'm okay with it. And I think that's where Tyler Perry is. I think Tyler Perry has his fans, his base, and it was mostly built from when he was doing his plays,
Hmm.
and those are the people that he makes his shows for. And I but and again, this comes from the social media era where like you can't do two things at once. People feel like you either have to like love something, borderline be obsessed with it, and or if you don't, you hate
Or
it.
hate it.
Yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
to me, I don't have to like everything that Tyler Perry does to celebrate him. Like I don't think that I think both, it can be both, and I could be
Yeah.
critical of his work but also still celebrate the fact that he is working. And I would love,
Yeah.
but the thing is I would love that, because we have that argument about white directors all the time. There's bad, I don't even like to use the word bad. There are white directors that make movies that may not be loved by a lot of people, and there are some that do. But the fact that you can actually have that argument is because there are so many of them, and for so long we haven't even had to have that many, because we were held to such a high standard, a standard that I don't think was fair, to where like a black director had to knock it out of the park, otherwise maybe they wouldn't have got another shot, compared to some of these guys who just make bad movies and they keep getting more money to make more bad movies, which
Mhm.
every time I see a bad movie, it makes my dreams more believable. Like
Yeah.
if somebody thought it was worth giving this guy money to make this movie, somebody on this planet would think, you know what, I'll give this guy a few bucks. Like
Right.
that's the way I kind of see it.
Yeah. My main thing with not to prolong this conversation on Tyler Perry, but the even in the episode where Tyler Perry was saying like I don't give a fuck about
Yeah,
he kind of does, because I like most people who saw those plays, right, enjoy them mostly for the song, right.
yeah. The musical
Most of
numbers were they were good.
right, like most of that is song driven in terms of like the musical performances were really good,
Yeah,
just like any other most plays you watch that have a musical performance,
and
that's really what drives it.
I think that his style of storytelling suits the stage more than it does the
It
camera.
does. 100%. My issue is though, and this is goes for black media in general. This is we can get into it about. I have a thing about Marlon Wayans. Um, it gets to the point to where it feels kind of like the minstrel show. I know people are gonna kill me for this, where it's like if I'm viewing something, and this could be projection, right? But like I don't like viewing something that has black people in it, where I have to then picture a white family watching me, like those niggas. You know what I mean? Like those loony niggas. You know what I mean? And so like when like the show like Mr. Brown and all that was out, and he was just like this buffoonish type character. It was very. I was like, as I was watching, I was like, this feels very like minstrel show type
You know what? I
buffoonery.
get you because you know what? It's like twofold. It's like on one hand, yeah, I know a couple guys like Mr. Brown. On the other hand, it's like, why is this the guy that you chose to push to the forefront? Because
Right? Yeah,
other
because
people,
what happens is
I think
they don't.
every race, every culture, every all even families, like we have like those people in our families that we like. If someone was to ask us about our family, like we wouldn't lead off with them. Like those would
Right?
be
Yeah.
we love them. They are real people. But but we don't want to put them out first because
Yeah.
of what people
Here's
might perceive.
right, because here's the difference: is for white people, they could watch a buffoonery type character, but in the if they scroll two channels over, there'll be something else like just as magnificent for them to watch about themselves.
And I would say that the white buffoonery character would be more beloved.
Exactly, there's that too. But the fact for us is because we have to scroll 13 to 20 channels before you find another one of us
Yeah.
that's in a better light. The ones that main people are watching is that one, right? Like they watch that and they're not tuning in for anything else. We are because we're searching for ourselves on the media
Yeah.
spectrum, but they're not searching for us, right? So that's all they see. All they see is Mr. Brown, or Blackish, right? So when they get to work the
Or
next day,
Medea, a guy
or
dressed up
Medea, so like
as an old woman.
right, so when they get to work the next day and they see black people, they're like, "Oh, the crazy niggas." You know what I mean? Like that's all they saw, right? This is true to the Chappelle show, right? Like Dave Chappelle said himself, he was like, "I'm out with my family." And white dude was like, "Morning, nigga." You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's all they saw, right? They didn't see Denzel Washington in glory. You know what I mean? Like that, they're not tuning in for that. They're not tuning in for the other stuff. They only see what's been propagated as like this is popular right now. You should watch it, and that's it, right? So their optics of what that is, and a lot of people would say it was like, well, that's not our problem to deal with. Like white people should just be good people. Yes, true, but at the same token, it would be nice if we had a diversity of different things that are put in the screens
Yeah.
because that's what people are going to base their theory of us off of, and why we have to do so much fucking configuring and work to explain otherwise, which is fucking tiresome for black people in general.
I feel that. I feel that. Yeah. I mean, even I know he experienced a little bit of backlash. I follow a few writers, mostly a lot of them TV writers, and he had posted a video where he had like 8 different scripts on the table, and they were of all these different shows that he was doing, and he talked about how he doesn't have a writer's room, and how it's just him. He writes all of his stuff,
Yeah.
and what stuck out is that there was a show on the table called Sisters, and it was like, so you mean to tell me that you don't have a writer's room, but you're writing a show about black women? Why don't you have black women help? Like, why don't, and that's the one area, if I was to ever, again, I can't tell a man what to do with his own space, but if there was the one thing that I would say, it wouldn't be about the minstrel show. It would be about, and maybe this would, in by cause and effect, fix that. Is why don't you have black writers in your room too?
Yeah.
And I don't think it makes you any less of a creator to bring in a more diverse group. And what I mean by diverse is not necessarily like different races, but just different types of black people, and allowing them to help flush out some of these characters in a way that there's just no way that one person could really truly fully flesh out all of these different perspectives. It's just impossible. And,
right. Like if you hire like a Donald Glover, Jordan Peele,
why not?
Ryan Coogler, you know what I mean? Like if he had those different types of those idea thinkers in the room, we probably would get really good Medea movies.
Yeah.
You
So
know
I
what mean?
remember thinking that, like, you're writing a story about women and this issue about, and I think there's like 4 women. That's what it's about. But you don't have any women writing. And
Right.
to me, that it's funny because like I mentioned earlier, like I we're talking specifically about black directors, But again, black people aren't the only ones experiencing that. I know women also have this idea that there's also, I don't know if you got a chance to see the movie or the show Queen's Gambit,
Oh
where
yeah,
you got a bunch of men writing the story about this woman,
yeah.
and how much more dynamic would that character be if you actually had women helping tell her story. And
Hmm.
it's up to the people who have the ability and the power to give microphones to those voices and allow those people to be amplified. And I hope Tyler Perry keeps going in that not just getting actors more shine and more shots, but also doing the same thing for other writers and directors, because he doesn't have to direct everything. What if he also produces stuff and then gives young directors an opportunity to shoot and film? And I assume that that's a part of his goal, and the fact that he built an entire studio for himself. I hope that that studio wasn't built just for Tyler Perry, but that it's there for other black creatives to be able to come out there and shoot their movies too, with
Yeah, I
his
mean
funding and
there's
backing.
there's a story to be had about his level of narcissism, and a lot of that is punctuated by the Boondocks episode that he railed against to try
Yeah,
to get off. You know what I mean? Like when I saw that Boondocks episode, I was like, yes, that's how I feel when I see a project from him. You know what I mean? Like for him to not do the same thing that Kenya Barnes did to himself, right in that episode, is very telling of like how he perceives himself.
yeah,
Um, and it's not like he can't take that same
that
level of
criticism.
criticism
Yeah,
um, from that. Like it was a very honest take. I thought, of course, it was upticked by for the comedy
yeah,
reasons, but like it was a very honest take of the situation and how some black people feel when they look at you doing this type of content. But yeah, we can move on from that. But yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I mean, I think we are in the best spot that we've ever been in, as far as the shows and opportunities that we're seeing be had for a diverse group. I know there's still a lot of work to go, but I would say I'm hopeful about where we could be, and that what we're seeing now could give birth to another generation where there are even more directors, where we don't have to, where I would like to get to the point where I can't name them all because there's too many.
Yeah,
Instead of
yeah,
like,
that
oh yeah,
that would be
we know that we
that'd be
know
great.
the few that's gonna get their shots, but I would love for it to be like white directors. I don't even know who this guy is. I've never heard of him before, because
Right.
because there's like 20 movies coming out by 20 different white directors, and I would love for it to be that numerous for us, where like I have to IMDb you in order to know who you are,
Yeah,
instead of like, yeah, it's him again. And
yeah,
again, this is no shade to those guys. I hope those guys keep getting their shots too.
yeah,
I love Spike, and I hope Spike keeps making movies until he can't make them anymore. But I also want the younger wave to also get that opportunity to be able to tell whatever stories they want.
yeah.
Um,
And for me, it feels a lot like politics, where you know how the argument for racism was like, oh, all those old white people will die eventually,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then it would just go away, right? Remember that argument that
yep,
people used to have, and some people still have that argument, oddly enough. But like, I feel like it's the same conversation that happens for Hollywood, right? It was like, oh, the Academy is a bunch of old white dudes that, once they die, things will change. It was like, no, because those old white dudes got cousins and kids and grandkids that feel the same way they do and raised the same way that they were raised, that is going to have those same positions by proxy just because they know, right? Like,
yeah,
speaking of Clubhouse, I was on Clubhouse and I heard white people giving other white people opportunities for no reason, just because. Like, and then I was here. There was one conversation where I heard somebody say, they was asking her what did she do, and she was like, "Oh, I am a marketing for. Um, I'm a marketer for uh, a big tech company or something like that. And the other person came off. He was like, "Oh, girl, same." She was like, "Yeah, I kind of just stumbled into it." I was like, "You just stumbled into like an 80K job? Is what you're saying?" What?
This,
Okay,
well, okay,
interesting.
it's perfect, and it's perfect that you mentioned that, because I know a guy who works for a company and he's pretty high up in there, and he hired another black guy. Now the other black guy was knowledgeable, like he wasn't a buffoon.
Right.
He knew what he was doing, but he was in a spot where he could give jobs and opportunities, and he did exactly what they do,
Yeah.
which is I'm gonna give it to the guy I know.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you only have one group that's able to do that, then
Right. That's what's
it's
the
just a
problem.
snowball, and that's what's always that's the to me that's been the thing about the machine that is the Hollywood system, is that it's
Yeah.
hard to get into it because it's just all the good boys club, and
Yeah.
it's, oh, I know this person, or this person grew up in the system, but you only really get in the system because of your relationships, and it's like you look at a guy like William Wilder. I love him, his work. He made one of my favorite movies ever, Ben Hur, and it's like, but like imagine being in his spot, and it's like you're a kid, and you're like, hey, movies would be cool, and your uncle owns Universal, and I like, and again, like, I'm never gonna knock someone who got a shot and they took advantage. Like,
Yeah.
that's not your fault. I'm not gonna blame you for getting an opportunity and taking advantage of your opportunity. But it's like, I know that there are a lot more creative black kids too, that all they really just need is that guy to say, "Here you go. You could do it here.
Yeah.
Have at it.
100%.
Here's a room where you can fail, where you can try, where you can make mistakes, where you can grow, but you're being given that opportunity, um, in a way that benefits not just that person but the entire culture."
Yeah. I think a perfect example of this, because I think we talked about this before. It might have been in one of our rooms, but and this is somebody I like, Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith is the perfect example of a white guy who can just fail over and over again
Yeah.
and still be considered, to some degree, great and have like a comfortable life
Yep.
in the Hollywood space. You know what I mean? Like, he, by and large, has not made universally acclaimed uh, content. All right, like, his stuff is like cult famous, right?
Yeah.
But he still has, for the most part, a really good life and career, even though he's been able to make mostly failed products,
Mm-hmm.
right? And still gets opportunity. Like, he made that fucking movie for his daughter, right? Which is a terrible movie. It's not good in the slightest, right? He does that and still gets opportunities to direct an episode of The Flash, which was the highest rated show on CW. You know what I mean? So it's just like, you can't tell me. It's one of the most frustrating things when you're looking for a job and it tells you, like, these are the qualifications that you need, right?
Yeah.
You need a BA in this, you need to study in this, you need to do that, and then you go through the interview process and it's grueling. And you get in, and then you work with your companion, like the people on your team and stuff like that, and you be like, and you're listening to them talk, and it was like, yeah, I don't know how to do this,
And they
and I
don't
don't
know
do that,
shit.
and don't know a goddamn thing. And you're like, what the fuck is going on in this place? I, you know what I mean? And that happens all the time. Everyone has that story of, like,
Can
you
you
get
open
in,
this PDF for me? You don't know how to open a PDF? Like, what is going on here?
yo. So this happens, and it's got to be frustrating for black creatives to see that all the time happen, and just be like, yo, how can I not? Because, like you said earlier, there is so much garbage that gets greenlit on a daily basis. I, I'll say this, and a lot of people will probably get at me for this, but like, workaholics, right? Those actors and workaholics get to just do stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like their show was mid at best, right? It's again one of those cult things of like, haha, it's a funny weed thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like ultimately that show is not that great, right? But those actors got to just be in stuff, right? Not because their talent level is high. I'll even go as far as saying, I don't think what the fuck is his name? God, who's the white boy that Zac Efron?
Mm-hmm.
Zac Efron is not a good actor. He's just not. And
He
yet,
just he just has a pretty face, so
yeah, like that's it. That's it. He's just an attractive white young male. And he every property I've seen, I've looked, I've tried to understand what the Zac Efron appeal is. I remember I watched him in it was like the pseudo docu series of the serial killer.
oh yeah, he was
Ted Bundy.
yeah, extremely vile and dangerous or something like that.
Right. So I'm watching this film
Extremely
and
extremely wicked, shockingly evil and vile. Yeah.
yes. So I'm watching this movie, right? Because I've seen other documentaries about Ted Bundy
Yes.
and they're interesting, right? So I'm watching this film and I don't know if it's specifically because they hired Zac Efron or it's because Zac Efron is not good at his job. But the way they perceived the movie is this like Ted Bundy was this hero or somebody to be admired, because that's how it was played up.
Yeah.
Like throughout the movie, like at no point in the movie did it felt like you were watching a vile and dangerous guy. Like
Yeah,
it was all played.
I thought the way they were gonna do it, which I don't know if they really succeeded, was to show that like like women were showing up to those court hearings with like T-shirts of him.
Right. Yeah, I
Like
got that part.
they were thinking like he didn't fit what they thought. Like you look at like Manson and you think yeah that guy looks crazy, but you
Mm-hmm.
looked at Bundy and you were like wait, like if he was to ask me out I would say yes,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah I don't know if it. But I think that they what they needed to do is to say yes that was the fact, but he then used that.
To kill people,
Yes.
women specifically.
Yes.
But like they never crossed that barrier, and I was just like, why the fuck did he get this part? Like
Because his
y'all could give it
face.
to anybody else.
Because his face.
Yeah, and it was just like, why does he keep getting it? Then he did like a DJ movie that nobody watched, and it's just like, yo, why do people keep liking him in these? Even in the thing that he's supposed to be good at, which is like the romantic comedy stuff,
Yeah.
trash, so piss poor bad. Like he's so fucking monotone, and he doesn't have like any type. Even like people praise him for Bad Grandpas being like a comedic actor. I was like, he's not funny either. Like,
And to me,
what?
my take on that is fine, let him make his movies. I got no problem with that. But just keep the same energy. Look, listen, like again, we're gonna keep referencing like Clubhouse stuff so that
Yeah.
the listeners may not be, but we've mentioned like Adam Sandler on
Oh yeah. Oh
on
god.
our Clubhouse, and
Yeah.
I am not that much. I know there are a lot of people who love his comedy. I'm not as big of a fan of his comedy. I think there are
Yeah.
some movies that he's done that are just like so classic that it's like, yeah, I'll buy it, but I still don't really like I can watch Waterboy and I don't ever laugh out loud, like ever.
Yeah.
But I'll watch it because, it's a classic movie. So, I'll let it ride. But most of his movies, like I can't get through it until the end. But it's like again, let him do that. I have no problem with him making his movies. Just for example, keep that same energy with Spike. Let Spike Lee make all the movies he wants.
Right.
Like who
Exactly.
cares if you don't like it? Let these guys do that. And take chances and do these weird wild things. Let these guys do it too. And like so far, and that's honestly where if we're speaking about like guys like Coogler, that's what I would love him to do. I would love him. It's not so much about a genre, but I want him to do something that's not safe. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so far he's been kind of safe. And I get it because you got to play your game. And I get it, man.
Yeah.
Do
You can't. You can only
make
fail but once.
man
for a
make your
black
moves.
actor.
Make your moves to where you can get cemented. And then once you're cemented, then you can shoot off. So I'm not trying to tell him to blow it, but it's like Fruitville. Like that was a story that was always gonna work because because just the basic story in itself was just so gut wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to you revive a one of the most successful franchises of all time, and again you really it'll be hard to kind of blow Rocky. Like I don't know how you can really mess that up any more
Yeah.
than Rocky himself already did, and then you do a Disney property in the middle of a cinematic universe where it's hard to fail. And again, but still, he blew it out of the water. So I still want to make sure that people know that I'm saying that he's done great with everything he's done. But I really want to see him. I really want to see him do something that's different.
Yeah. Is it odd? Is it odd? And I would love to see somebody more intellectual than I am really like do something on this. But is it something to be said that relative or more revenant black directors that we have, like the barrier of entry for them, for Hollywood specifically, is you have to make a good black pain movie first.
Yes.
And then we'll let you try to do something else.
Okay,
because
so
it feels that way.
Let's go down the list. Jordan Peele.
Yeah. Get Out, right?
That's a black pain movie.
Black pain
you
movie.
Look at
Ryan Coogler.
I would say yes, Ryan Coogler. I would say what was Ava's first one?
That's a good question.
I can't remember what her first movie was because
I know Selma. Was it Selma?
No, I think she had done whatchamacallit before Selma.
But, well, no, I mean, like, I think Selma was like her first.
Maybe, one. But she also did 13th. I don't know if we're concluding the documentaries.
Yes,
she did do 13th.
Still the same lines, right? I mean, she did also When They See Us, which again, phenomenal.
Another thing, you got to do at least one.
Yeah. I mean, came out in 20. I mean, she has a movie I will follow, but I don't think anybody.
Even go back to John. Even go back to John Singleton. He had to do Boys in the Hood.
Black Pain Story, right? So like, it just I would love to see somebody do something on this.
Hell, I'd even say Barry Jenkins, and if you look at Moonlight to an extent is
the
Black Pain story. It just has to do with homosexuality in the black community. So it's like you have to do. I don't know. That's interesting. You got to do that one. You got to do that one that speaks uniquely to the black experience, because that's what they expect a black director to do. They don't expect a black director to come out and just tell some regular story. Like you got to tell the story that we're too afraid to tell, because if we tell it, we might get it wrong, and then they'll call us racist. So why don't you tell that story, and we'll give you the money to tell it, and then after that, okay. Because didn't Shaka King do mostly comedy before?
Shaka King, I don't know.
Yeah, I think this was his most commercial thing, though. He did Mulligans and Newlyweds.
Yeah, I haven't even seen that. Yeah, so this has got to be.
I think he was more lighthearted. This is the heaviest thing that he's done, but this was also like his biggest thing, and it was a black struggle story.
Yeah.
Wow, I hadn't really thought about that theory. But okay, so it's like funny. Like I don't know if you've watched Atlanta, but and this is what I mean when I'm saying about Coogler doing something different. And maybe that's just not his game. I don't want to force him to do something that's not his style. But like the fact that Donald said, "Hey, I'm gonna have an episode where I'm gonna have Justin Bieber on, but Justin Bieber is gonna be played by somebody black."
Yes.
Or that I'm gonna have an episode where there is an invisible car, and we're going to have a scene outside of a club where an invisible car runs over people. Like just those moments in which we bend reality, but because why not?
I stand for Donald Glover so hard because I didn't grow up like Donald Glover, but Donald Glover's experience through life is very much like mine.
Yeah.
Of like, white kids liked me first. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, black kids, when they finally did accept me, it was like begrudgingly at first. You know what I mean?
That's why I connect a lot with him and Issa. This idea of the awkward black person.
Yes.
the person
Um,
that's not necessarily the coolest, probably more likely friend zoned more than not.
yes,
All those things where it's like, yeah, I gotta do a little bit extra just to be seen as cool. But
right,
usually when I do that, it just looks stupid.
yeah,
you know,
yes,
so so
exactly. Dead,
I
dead on.
always love that idea that he tells that and he plays it perfectly. I mean, because
Yeah,
if you just looked at him, you would think, yeah, this looks like an awkward guy.
yeah. The episode 1 and 2, where I knew that this show was for me and that I could be on this writing team, was the episode 1 where he's in at the radio station
Yes.
and he's talking to the white dude, and the
Yeah.
white dude says
Yeah.
drops nigger, right? And he talks to the janitor. He's like, "Yo, has that dude ever said nigger around you?" He was like, "No, I'll beat his ass," right? like, like I was like, yes, yes to that. And then the other scene where he's in the prison waiting room
Yeah.
and he's sitting in between the dude who's talking to the trans
Yep.
woman, and he's sitting there. He's like, I can move. He was like, I didn't tell you to move, right? And the line I was like, because I remember specifically because some people got to the show late and were texting me and like hit me up. It was like, yo, this is you. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, it is. But that line where he's like sitting in there and he stands up and the dude's arguing, and he was like, and why are you just? He was like, stop being weird. He was like, I'm not. I was like, yeah, that's me. That's fucking me.
Yeah, man, that show is fantastic, man. And I'm pissed off that it's taking so long. But I just read that they're about to film season 3 and 4 back to back. So,
Wow. Okay.
well, I mean,
Cool.
it's a testament to them because all four of the main characters have all been getting booked for all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's dope
Yeah.
that they're all working, um, because for most of them, this was my introduction to them. I think I had seen Lakeith in other places, but I had not seen Zazzy before this. Or I mean, I had seen Donald, but just mostly his music. But he did have that short film, which I can't remember the name of, that he released. So I kind of always, and then we saw him in TV. But
Was that the one that had Danielle Panabaker on it?
yeah,
Okay. Yes, I remember watching that.
um, but yeah, I I I like that group, but that group is, and I don't know if that show was a part of it, but that group has been in a lot of movies lately. So yeah, so they're finally getting around to shooting that, and I think and Issa, I believe they announced is shooting the final and fifth season.
Yeah, for
With
Insecure.
so yeah,
Good
I'm
stuff
loving
coming.
it, and it seems like we're moving to that to that side as well, where I think a lot of creatives are realizing, because it used to be before you didn't get limited series, like you had to do a long syndicated series, so you had to have a concept that would work over a span of years. So it was either do TV or movies, and usually those were vastly different. But
Yeah.
now we're seeing, especially like with the advent of Netflix, we're seeing these cinematic TV shows being made
Yes.
where like you're watching Narcos, and Narcos is just a bunch of 1 hour movies pretty much. So you
Right.
can have a concept and think, you know what, this is a little bit too big for the big screen. Maybe I can flush it all the way out, and instead of it being one really long movie, this can be a five episode series.
Yeah.
And I think
Uh,
that's why we're starting to see a lot of writers and directors doing TV as much, because we're starting to get a cinematic experience from TV as well.
not before we get too far away from it. If they don't do an episode in Atlanta called Moan Room, then it's a missed opportunity.
I wonder if they're gonna strike with that, because they've been pretty good about touching on current social stuff, like even
Yeah.
like the party at Drake's house where Drake wasn't actually even there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always respected that, man. So I'm hopeful that this is like the start of a really good wave of more authentic storytelling,
Yeah.
where I can say even more so, like, I can relate a lot to that guy, instead of watching the show that's about the drug dealer, and it's like, that's cool, I know guys like that, but I'm not a drug dealer, I'm not a tough guy, I've never been to
Yeah.
jail, I don't have all, so I I can't connect to that story that you keep wanting to tell so bad. Like I'm
Yeah.
too far removed from slavery, so I can't connect to that. I wasn't alive during the civil rights movement, so I can't, so all of these stories that they keep wanting to tell are stories that I can't directly connect with. I can only
That's like
connect
I
with
think
it,
that's why I really enjoyed the movie Dope, because
great movie. Great movie.
that movie felt closer aligned to
Yep.
like something I could like get up and be like, yes, I experienced this.
Yep. And I believe was it Forrest Whitaker? I think Forrest Whitaker was like a producer on it. I
He
know
might have
he
been.
I know he was even a narrator, and I think even Pharrell had some backing in it. I think
Yeah.
musically.
Yeah,
So
because Rick Fuyama
yeah, he directed
is
it.
so
Right.
yeah so
Yeah.
good as a director,
Yep.
man. Yeah, when he was talking about the Mandalorian at the top of the bill, like his his directorial presence on that show, like some of the best work. You know what I mean? Like some of his best stuff, or some of the best stuff on the show specifically came from his episode.
Yeah, dope. And
Um,
it was funny because he also did The Wood, which is one of my favorite movies, which is
yeah, yeah,
is an LA classic.
hmm
And it's funny because in Dope, Stacy is in there,
yeah.
and he's in there, and I think his name is Stacy.
Is it? I'll have to go back and
But
watch it.
he's a security guard at the high school.
Yeah,
So it's like it's almost as if like this is the same universe, his own universe that is LA, and his idea that now Stacy's grown up and now he's a security guard at the school. And he's the one telling those kids that they need to watch out and they need to, So
yeah, that's funny.
so yeah, so I held you off earlier cuz I want to close by asking you um when is the moment, if there was a moment, when was the moment or the time that you fell in love with movies?
Um, so it's a two-parter. So one, and it basically started my blurred origin story, and the other was when I realized film as like a thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is more than just moving pictures. So the intro to my blurred ism was Batman 1989, Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
I saw that movie as a kid. I was born in '86. I saw that movie, and I remember I learned how to like read and write at an early age,
Mm-hmm.
so I was like really good with context. Like I was able to like pull stuff together fairly easily. And I remember watching that movie, thinking to myself as if it was yesterday, my toy is on screen,
Yep.
moving around,
Yep.
and it's just like it just like it blew my mind that this was a thing, right? Because this was live action. This was not a cartoon. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So I was like, this is something else, right? And even though I didn't get all of it, I got enough to where I was like I was entranced. And then later on, I was like, oh my god, you can just read about this stuff
Yep.
like whenever you want. Where my mom at so I can hit her? Where I need to kick her in the shins? Why does she not provide me with any of this
Yep.
stuff? Why did I have to find this out by myself? So there's that. And the moment that I learned that, oh, this is film, was when I saw Do the Right Thing for the first time. Um, I, and this is a credit to the film and Spike Lee, there is never a moment in time where that movie is not irrelevant for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, right? Like, I remember I showed it to somebody after the George Floyd thing, and this is a white person, and
They hadn't seen it yet. Seen it before?
she, yeah, she hasn't seen it yet,
Okay.
and so I didn't what I do most of the time when I have somebody who's never seen it, especially a white person, um, I don't prepare them for what happens.
Yeah, you can't. You gotta just let it hit them.
Yeah, so what
Sack
I
of
tell them is
bricks.
like, yeah, people ask me like, what's the movie about? And I say, well, it's about a day and a night in this particular part of New York, um, that follows this guy who works at a pizza joint. And that's kind of like the pitch that I give them. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like, really? And I'll be like, yeah, trust me, it's a good movie. So we're watching, right? And God, this movie is so fucking good. I could talk about this movie for hours. But like the movie takes you on this journey with Mookie, right? And they instantly, this is something that Spike Lee is really good at. Spike Lee makes the environment of the character of his movie, and it's instantly done in like pan shots and um, uh, B-roll type stuff, right? Like he instantly makes the neighborhood part of it makes it a new character, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he introduces characters, even if they're relatively very small, um, as like these are roles you should pay attention to, right? Like people like the mayor and the people on the block and stuff like that, whether it's the Latina group or the black group, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he makes these people like relevant characters throughout, um, and then you get probably one of my favorite scenes of all time, where Spike Lee takes Pino to the side and is like, "Yo, who's your favorite singer?" And he was like, "Bruce." He was like, "No, your favorite singer is Prince." He was like, "No, Bruce." He was like, "No, your favorite singer is Prince." He was like, "You like Michael Jordan?" He was like, "Favorite basketball player," and stuff like that. So like, he's going. He's like, "You hate niggas, but all the people that you love is so called niggas." He was like, "No, no, they're not. They're not niggas. They're different." And you're like, that stuck with me so hard because of
Mm-hmm.
the level of fucking truth that's in that. And then they do that scene where it's all like this tirade of like expletives and um stereotypes that's being and derogatory terms that's being said by different races, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of this is what people see when they see people, right? Like these unconscious biases that are being said all the time, especially in that era, even more so than now, publicly, right? These are the things that people think when they view these races, and I just thought it was such a brilliantly shot thing of like, this is how people feel, but ultimately they enjoy our stuff. You know what
Yep.
I mean? Um, and that they can't separate the two, or no, or I should say they do find a way to separate the two, right? Where they can hate, and they hate the bane of our existence, but God, do they love the things that we create, right?
Yep.
Um, so that stuck with me always, right? And then it gets to the end, right? Spoilers for people who haven't seen Do the Right Thing, but it gets to the end, right? And you have Radio Raheem. Uh, what happens, right? But even more so than that, it's the fact that Sal turns, right? Because throughout the movie, Sal seems like this empathetic character, right? And in a moment of weakness, you find out that he is not that different from his child. You know what I mean? Like that sentiment exists in Sal as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like turn that fucking jungle music off, nigga, right? You know what I mean? Like that leaves his lips in a moment of weakness, right? Which just lets you know that even in the best of a person that you perceive, right, there's still this level of disdain. And I just thought, like, man, what a fucking layered thing to see, right? And then the follow up of like the next day happens, right? And then people just cleaning up the block, right? And life just has to continue on. And it's just like, damn, that's so fucking good. I have a poster of Do the Right Thing in my wall. I actually got to meet um I got to meet God, why I can't say his name. Um uh I know his name, and why is it blanking? Um, I was about to say Geraldo. It's not Geraldo. It's Giancarlo Esposito.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I got to meet him actually randomly at a con. So like I have the Jordan 4s that his character Bugging Out wore in the movie, and it took me a very long time. You would think that this thing would already exist, but the laces he did, where it was like the Pan African colors,
Yeah.
in the front part of the sneaker. It took me forever. I didn't find an exact copy, but I found one close enough to it, and like I switched out my sneakers to look like that, right? So I happened to be at a Comic Con here in Texas, and I was there wearing those sneakers, and then I looked over and saw Gene Carlos Esposito there at one of the booths, and I was just like, oh shit. So like I went to go up to meet him, and then me being a dummy didn't even realize like, oh yeah, you got to pay money to like do this thing, right?
Yeah.
So I was like a person behind. I was like, I don't have any cash on me. I need to go get cash. And he was like, oh, don't worry about it. I'll hold your place. I was like, oh God, thank you. So I ran over to the ATM, and there's like three people in front of me. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to see this dude, right? So like I finally get to the thing. The surcharge is fucking nuts, right? I feel like I was
Like
like, did y'all borrow?
$6 to get $10 out.
Yeah, I was like, did y'all borrow this from a strip club? Where did y'all get this fucking ATM machine? So I get the money out. I come back and he was like, man, you were gone for like 20 minutes. I was like, I'm so sorry. Thank you for waiting for me. And I was like, I'm wearing I'm wearing the shoes for the movie. I don't know if you remember from Do the Right Thing. I'm wearing the sneakers. And he was like, oh, cool. Take them off. I'll sign them. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I take him off. He writes like bugging out on it. And I was like, man, this is so cool. I was like, what do I got to do? Do I got to throw like a trash can through a window for this? And he laughed. He thought that was funny. And he gave me, because he was also in Breaking Bad, he gave me like a box cutter and signed that. Super humble dude. Gave me like his business card. Guy's a treasure.
I have
But
written on my list of things I want to do. I want to do an episode dedicated to him. I think he's one of those unsung
yes,
actors in Hollywood where he's proven that he's like really actually great at this, but I don't
yes,
think he gets nearly the amount of
he does not.
love that he deserves.
Yeah, he is a career actor who anything and everything that he gets in is fucking great. He crushes every role he
Yep.
steps into. But yeah, a super dope guy. Yeah, so I ended up putting those shoes like in a glass case. I have that like on my fire
So
mantle. But
fun rumor. There's a theory that on the show Hey Arnold, which is one of my favorite cartoon series, the episode, I think it's entitled Heat, is like an homage to Do the Right Thing. So
interesting.
it's like really hot outside, and it's just them trying to stay out of the heat and keep cool or whatever. And then
I vaguely remember this episode. Yeah.
and then towards the end, there's like a revolt. Now, of course, nobody dies, but
Sure.
it's the Jolly Ollie man that's kind of like taking advantage of the kids. So the kids revolt and they turn over his truck and all that stuff. So there's a theory that there's like even some side by side comparisons that they did of that episode, which
Yeah.
So I respect that. It's funny. I don't really have moments, but there are feelings that I have that when I watch a movie that gives me those feelings again, that's what makes me really actually love a project. And
Yeah.
one comes with watching westerns with my grandmother, and the other comes with watching kung fu movies with my dad, which is you put those together and it makes a lot of sense why I'm a Tarantino guy. But
Yeah.
I remember it's not even so much the kung fu movies itself, but it was my dad's reactions to the movies and me realizing that something that's on the screen can make people feel a certain way, and knowing that my dad, who wasn't a very emotional guy, but to see him get excited at Bruce Lee jumping up in the air and crushing this guy's ribs, like that got my dad to audibly cheer. And
Yeah.
that was the first time where I kind of recognized the correlation between something happening on the screen and how it can make people feel. And I think I had always been chasing after trying to recapture that idea of making something that people like. And
Yeah.
I think that's why eventually I made my way to film, because there was this idea that it was the best way for me to capture emotion. Of all the mediums that I had ever tried out, it was the one where I was like, I could really actually get a visceral reaction out of this in a way that I just couldn't do with a still or a drawing or. So yeah, man, I appreciate you. I know you said you're in Texas, so that means it's late right now.
It's about 10:30.
That's not too bad.
I'll leave you with a Do the Right Thing story.
All right.
So I am a sober man. I've never been drunk or high or tipsy or buzzed ever in my life. Right?
Same.
So this means I've always been the guy that's got to be the DD when I go out with a group of my friends, right? So after a club, I used to live in Charleston, South Carolina, for context. After we would come out of the club, a lot of times we would go to this pizza spot, right? It's a pizza spot in Charleston. So
that's where the Tiki Torch people were, right?
No, that was in West Virginia, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So, and there is a Charleston in Virginia.
Okay, that's what it is.
So we go to the pizza spot or whatever, right? And it's kind of packed on this particular night, and it's loud in there, right? So I finally get into the line, and the guy in the back, this old white guy, and like his daughter, who's there, I assume, is because they're all family restaurants when it comes to Italians. So they're sitting there and they're yelling from the back, but I can't hear what they're saying. And they were screaming toppings, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. So I was like, "What?" And it was like they screaming back. It was like, "What toppings do you want on your pizza?" And I was just like, "Oh, I need some pepperoni mozzarella." I was like, "First of all, don't be screaming at me, man." And then I don't know what made me do it, but I went into full bugging out mode. And I was like, "I want some extra cheese on my pizza. Put some extra cheese on my slice, Sal," which is not his name. I was like,
Did he
"I want
get
some
the
extra cheese
reference?
on my pizza. I want some extra cheese on my pizza, Sal. I want more black people on the wall."
Did he
Sober.
did he understand the reference?
No, not even a little. He was pissed. And then I'm the soberest one in the fucking group, and all my drunk friends all of a sudden sort of like kind of started realizing what was happening, and they was just like, "LA, you need to."
You made them sober up.
Yeah.
They dried up real quick.
Yeah. Oh man, that was funny. I got my pizza though. Got my pizza. Oh man, that was great. But man, this has been a great experience. I really appreciate you bringing me on.
All right, man. I appreciate it, man. So this has been another episode of Tone Deaf. He's been LA. I've been Antonio. We're out.
Yeah. Flows by DK slow till cash flow on Bezos. My